Welcome back guys. In this video I'll be comparing the performance of two frame generation techniques, AMD's FSR 3 and lossless scaling's LSFG 2.1 X2 mode. Both of these techniques try to double the FPS by adding interpolated frames. FSR 3 is absolutely free, relies on optical float technology and game data like motion vectors. This is why it cannot be implemented on a driver level basis. The game developers need to implement FSR 3 in their games. It only works with games that run using DirectX 12 API. At the moment, FSR 3 game compatibility is limited. LSFG on the other hand is a paid application, a part of lossless scaling. This application sells on Steam Store for around $7 US. This frame generation technique does not rely on game data like motion vectors. It's built using machine learning, works on any GPU whether it's from Intel, AMD or Nvidia, does not matter. Its compatibility is better than FSR 3. Both Vulkan and DirectX 12 API are supported. Even the older APIs like DirectX 9, 10 and 11 are supported. I tested LSFG with an old game like GTA 4, was really impressed by the results. It doubled the game's FPS from 60 to 120. LSFG works just like an overlay. Launch LSFG, keep it running in the background, then launch your game. While the game is running, press the hotkey for enabling LSFG and frame generation will work. Generally, a minimum of 60 FPS is recommended for using any frame generation technique. This way you won't be seeing a lot of frame generation related artifacts. Input delay won't be a problem as well. From my own testing I can say you can use both of these frame generation techniques even with games running at 30 FPS, especially if you are using a gamepad. The input delay penalty is more perceivable using a mouse than a gamepad. However, FSR 3 will produce less artifacts than LSFG at lower FPS values like 30. This is exactly what I am going to show you in this video. So I'll kick things off with Elden Ring. Before starting Elden Ring, I'll just start lossless scaling, show you its settings. Click on the drop down bar under frame generation, select LSFG 2.1, not using any of lossless scaling's upscaling algorithms. X2 frame generation mode, not using the application's performance mode. Clip cursor setting enabled, draw FPS setting enabled, capture API DXGI. That's it. Click on settings, start as administrator setting checked, hotkey for enabling LSFG, Control Alt and S. Keep the app running in the background, minimize it. First I'll run the game with PureDark's FSR 3 mod install. Already shown you how to install it. We'll drop the video link in the description. We'll load Shadow of Earth 3 expansion. My ally is running on BIOS version 338. For this game I've set the UMA buffer size to 5 GB. Even 4 GB buffer size will work fine. I have installed AMD's GPU driver, Adrenaline Edition 24.6.1. Command center settings using a 25 watts manual profile, all three power values set at 25 watts. 720p resolution, CPU boost disabled. Connected my GuliKit KK3 Max gamepad to LSFG 2.4 GHz band wireless mode. Launch the game. Using a custom Afterburner overlay to show you the performance metrics, just open Adrenaline settings. RSI enable, resolution upscale from 720p to Full HD. FreeSync and VSync enabled. Anti-lag setting enabled. This is PureDark's mod menu. From here I have disabled upscaler, not using it. I'll disable frame generation for the time being. Here you go. The game is running in offline mode. With the FSR 3 mod installed, you cannot go online. Display mode set to borderless Windows 720p resolution. Advanced settings. This is basically the medium preset. You need to enable motion blur and anti-aliasing. I've set them to high. And this is for PureDark's mod. I am in the Shadow realm. There's our character standing in a big open area. You can see the furnace golem in the background. Check out the input response. FPS here is around 46 to 53. It's roaming around. Mostly stays around 45. This game's FPS is capped at 60 on PC platform. Yes, you heard it right. Okay, now I'll enable PureDark's mod. Frame generation. Open the mods menu. Check enable frame generation. Close the menu. Yeah, I can observe the smoothing effect. FPS increased to around 90. And this is amazing. When I move the camera in complete circles, can observe a screen tearing like effect on both left and right edges of the display, right here. Minor graphical artifact. This technique is used to prevent the flickering of game's HUD elements when frame generation is enabled. Up to AMD to fix it. Shouldn't be a problem when moving the camera at normal speeds like this. No graphical artifacts around the character model. Swinging my sword, let me just consume some Estus. Game's HUD elements are not flickering. So good implementation of FSR 3. Now I'll disable it and enable LSFG off. Press Ctrl Alt and S keys together. Yeah, it's working. Check out the input response. I can observe the added amount of smoothness. Base FPS is around 45. FPS with frame generation enabled is around 90 to 100. Summon torrent. Not observing any graphical artifacts even around the left and right edges of the display when I move the camera in complete circles. Just observe the character model. No ghosting around the model. Sprint around. I'll be honest guys, LSFG performs better than FSR 3 in this game. Best part is you can use LSFG with the game's online mode. This is not possible with FSR 3. I'll be testing the next game. Now I'll be running Ghost of Tsushima. This game was updated recently. It now supports FSR 3.1. I'll be using XeSS version 1.3 upscaler. For this game I've set the UMA buffer size to 5 GB. Resolution 720p, display mode full screen, upscaler XeSS using its quality preset, frame generation disabled for the time being, VSync disabled, graphics using the medium preset, motion blur then set to nil, adrenaline settings, FreeSync and VSync enabled, anti-lag setting disabled, that's it. There is Jin. I am at Golden Temple. This area is very demanding. You can see FPS is around 40 here, a bit variable. 42, 43. Choppiness can be observed. FPS is out of Rog Ally's VRR range, that is 48 to 120 Hz. Now I'll enable frame generation, official implementation. Frame generation set to FSR 3. Apply. You can see FPS increased to around 80. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Sprinting around. FSR 3.1 decouples the upscaler from FSR frame generation. Now we are able to use different upscalers like DLSS or XeSS in conjunction with FSR frame generation. In this case I am using XeSS. Game's HUD is not flickering. Good implementation of FSR in this game. Input delay is not a big deal using my bow. Okay, now I'll disable FSR frame generation and use LSFG off. Enabled LSFG. The base FPS is around 40. FPS with frame generation enabled is around 80. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Okay, Jin's head is flickering. Let me just run around. Roughly the same performance using both FSR frame generation and LSFG, but FSR 3 produced less graphical artifacts than LSFG. Engine's head always flickers when I move the camera around like this. It's a bit distracting. Oh my god, aggressive flickering. See, input delay is not an issue. Launch my arrow. Now I'll be testing the next game. Now I'll be running Alan Wake Part 2. For this game I'll just set the UMA buffer size to 6 GB. Epic Games version of the game. Show you the adrenaline settings. FreeSync and VSync enabled and relax setting enabled. That's it. In order to enable FSR frame generation in this game, I have installed DLSS enabler mod. Display mode set to borderless. Resolution scaling set to DLSS, which is essentially XeSS version 1.3. Frame generation disabled for the time being. In-game VSync disabled. These effects disabled. Motion blur, frame gain and lens distortion. Low to medium settings. SSAO enabled. Ray tracing disabled. That's it. There is a character. Here FPS is around 40. Check out the input response. That's Rose, Alan Wake's #1 fan. Oh my god. Let's run around. (38 to 43 FPS). I'll just enable frame generation now. DLSS frame generation on. Load the same sequence. FPS increased to around 70. I can observe some ghosting around the left edge of the display. Common FSR3 behavior. I think this issue has been fixed in FSR 3.1. I hope the mods will get updated as well. No artifacts around the character model. This game you need to edit the .ini file. Disable one setting. V-lens distortion. Sprint around. Oh my god. Almost got killed. So now I'll be using LSFG. FSR frame generation disabled. LSFG enabled. You can see its FPS counter. Load the same sequence. Base FPS is around 40. FPS with frame generation enabled around 70 to 80. Okay. Character model is flickering. Ahead. Flickers when I move the camera quickly. Just heal myself. Run around. Good performance gains in this game even with LSFG. Unfortunately, some graphical artifacts are present. See? Nothing extreme. Input delay is not an issue. Game's HUD is not flickering. I'll give the win to FSR3 in this game. Base FPS dropped down to around 30 there. Now I'll be testing Horizon Forbidden West. This game received a new update recently. It added FSR 3.1 support to the game. Just set the UMA buffer size to auto on Rog Ally. It's the Steam version of the game. 720p resolution, display mode set to full screen, upscale XeSS using its quality preset, VSync disable, frame generation disable for the time being, using the low preset, motion blur then set to nil. Adrenaline settings, FreeSync and VSync enable, anti-lag setting disable. That's it. There's Aloy. Check out the input response. A query site is nearby. FPS is around 38 to 40. This is the game running without any frame generation technique. XeSS image quality looks nice. Not bad at all. And just enable FSR frame generation. On. Apply. Back to the game. FPS increased to around 70 to 80. Can observe the added amount of smoothness. Camera is floating. Can see the screen tearing like effect around the left and right edges of the display. It's present even in FSR 3.1. Game's HUD is not flickering. Game is running smooth like butter. Frame generation for you. input delay. Some input delay is present, nothing extreme. Should be able to play the game. It's not a first person shooter. Very good performance by FSR 3. I'll just enable LSFG now. First disable FSR frame generation. Enable LSFG. Yeah, it's working. Resume the game. Base FPS is around 30. FPS with frame generation on 60. Check out the input response. Okay, can observe some choppiness. Aloy's head is flickering. Gameplay is not very smooth. FSR was definitely smoother than LSFG in this game. Let me just disable VSync from Adrenaline. It may be the issue. VSync off. Still not as smooth as FSR. Aloy's head is also flickering. So it's a clear win for FSR frame generation. 60 to 70 FPS with LSFG. 60 to 80 FPS with FSR frame generation. Time to conclude the video. In Elden Ring, LSFG and FSR 3 had roughly the same performance, but the former produced less graphical artifacts than the latter. The best part is you can use LSFG even with the game's online mode. In the remaining games, LSFG produced graphical artifacts around the character model's head, so it's a bit difficult for me to recommend it in those games. In Alan Wake Part 2 and Ghost of Tsushima, LSFG's performance was again similar to FSR 3. However, in Horizon Forbidden West, I observed some choppy gameplay with LSFG enabled. It was a clear win for FSR 3 frame generation. It was actually FSR 3.1. Good thing is that both of these frame generation techniques keep receiving updates. They are getting better update by update. They are definitely not perfect yet. Some minor issues still exist. Hopefully their future iterations will fix these issues. Looking forward to testing them. That's it for the video guys. I hope you find it useful. Thanks for watching and have a nice day.